All right, everyone. I'm back on the fancy camera, believe it or not. We're out here not spreading fertilizer. We're spraying it down. We're putting down the good old 32%. And I'm kind of just going to show you guys how we apply our fertilizer. And so we've got our spray truck here. It holds about 3,200 gallon, which is enough for 3 loads full on our sprayer, who's way down there. And we're applying it, like I said, to winter wheat here. So, for those of you who don't know, might not know, winter wheat here is planted in the fall, and then it grows a little bit, kind of comes up out of the ground. Not quite this far. This has started, growing back again because it's spring. But all this got planted. It has to freeze, goes into its dormancy. And then after that, when it starts getting warm out, it grows again and can take advantage of all the moisture that it got during the wintertime. When you plant it, typically, some people will do it a little bit differently, but typically, at least for us, we will go ahead and put down some drill filler starter fertilizer to kind of give it a little bit of a kick, but it needs more fertilizer again after it starts coming out of the ground and coming out of its dormancy. And so what we're doing right now is we're spraying it down. We've got the biggest nozzles we can put on our sprayer, and we're fertilizing that way. A lot of people will, if they own their own spreader, they'll spread their dry fertilizer or hire like a co-op or some kind of custom work company to go and do their fertilizer spreading, and they'll do dry. But we like 32%. We like the kind of availability of it and its effectiveness. And so that's what we do. And we've got a sprayer, so we just put the big nozzles on it and we put it down ourselves. This stuff right here is pretty dang heavy. It's I don't know if it's twice as heavy as water, but it's a big old load. And so putting it down onto living wheat, we generally like to put our LSW floater tires, which if you don't know what those are, they're wides. So that is what we're doing here. And I'll show you a little bit of the spray setup. I don't know if I've gone into detail here. So this right here is your fill. Go ahead and undo that, and once we get back to the tanks at the home place, you hook it up, pump it into that divider right there, and that'll go into these 2 big tanks. These smaller tanks are for kind of bulk storage of chemical that obviously does not need to be that much. I mean, the chemical is a minimal percentage of the actual tank load. This stuff doesn't matter for now, but those are our meters for metering the chemical out of these 3 smaller tanks, as well as the cone there. So pump it out here through our hose on the back. That goes just right into the sprayer. A 3-inch pump would be nice, but for doing all of our summer spraying for our fallow and herbicide, anything like that, it pumps water in there too quickly for us to actually either meter out of these 3 tanks or pull out of that cone when you're mixing with the jugs. So all that being said, we'll probably stick with the 2-inch. I'm pretty sure that's a 2. Yeah, and that's just how we do it. Soon enough, he ought to be back, and we'll start filling him up. Also, I think that the International Cab Over deserves a little bit of love. Our old spray rig here. I love it. Not anybody else on the farm really does, but I just think it's kind of got a cool old factor to it. And for being an 80s truck, it only has 83,000 original miles on it, which is insanely low for something this age. It's got an old Detroit sitting in there. My exposure is not on auto right now, but yeah, I love it. I don't know, tell me what you guys think. I suppose that if anybody is really into getting a super low mile old cab over like this and wanted to build it, everything's for sale for the right price. So yeah, hit me up. We might take you up on your offer. Never know. So you might also be wondering what is necessary about putting down fertilizer every year, and especially this much, because after you see how much the sprayer puts down, we're putting down a lot of liquid. We spray about half as fast when we're putting down fertilizer as we do when we're spraying in crop or in fallow. And the main reasoning behind that is that every single year that you put any sort of crop out onto a field, it is completely new growth, so it's going to take a whole lot of nutrients in order to actually effectively grow and produce a good volume of yield, whether it's, you're harvesting, typically you're harvesting, the seed. And so that's going to be, I got a cut on my thumb there. I don't know how that happened. Anyways, it's necessary because obviously as that goes and pulls the nutrients out of the soil, you could lose a lot of your soil fertility pretty quickly. As opposed to something like an open grassland, that grass is pretty well established. You're not growing very many, new plants. And even still, if you were to fertilize, some grass pasture, you would see some incredible growth out of that grass, and it would become very, very productive. Compared to if you didn't, especially if you got adequate rain. If you don't really get any rain, fertilizer doesn't make any sense. That's why we're actually pressing so hard to get this put on right now, because we're expecting a good bit of precipitation in the next 2 days. We're expecting some snowfall tomorrow evening, tomorrow night, and then the following day we're supposed to get some decent rain. So hoping out on that. A lot of our fertilizing, we really try to place it around the rain. Now, back to the talking about grass pasture. I'm no expert on whether or not you can actually make that pencil out, whether or not it's really worth it to go and fertilize pasture, or maybe you're baling it for grass hay. I'm no expert, but with farming wheat, you definitely need it. Now, with a crop like peas, any of these legume crops, they will go and they actually put nitrogen back in the soil. So it's almost like a natural fertilization tool. Which is kind of why we have it in our rotation. And peas do not need to be fertilized. They do need starter fertilizer and inoculant in order to kind of kickstart their growth after you plant them, but they do not need any extra fertilizer. What they need is adequate water, essentially, and then other micronutrients in the soil, but they are not as dependent on fertilizer as wheat here. Similar reasoning as to why we let our fields summer fallow, give them a little bit of rest, give them time to kind of rebuild some microbial activity in the soil, because it can kind of get a little bit worn out. And when you're running, wheat through there, you're fertilizing it, it's just because it's not how the soil would sit in its natural state when it's not being farmed. It definitely needs a break now and then. It's just good for it. Yeah, you just got to take care of your soil health. It's important. It seems like a little bit of an investment, but really, the more you take care of your ground, the more it takes care of you. Pretty straightforward stuff. And so that's what we're doing right here. Here he comes, right over there. Maybe you can see him. Not autofocusing on me now. Anyways, all that put aside, that's kind of a general overview of the reason why we fertilize. I am not nearly as much of an agronomy expert as my dad is, especially not as much as our actual agronomist. We pay somebody to come take soil samples, compare that with the crops we're putting on, the history of crops we've been putting on. Did I say moisture content? Anyways, we hire somebody to go around, scout, take samples, analyze it, and then give us a proper recommendation of what fertilizer that we should put onto our fields. And then based on that, and as well as our target yield, we will go and fertilize according to what the agronomist says. Weather forecast plays into that for the year. Obviously, you can't predict the weather very effectively, but for example, if it was a strongly predicted drought year, you would maybe fertilize for a lower yield than you would if you were projected to have a higher amount of rainfall that year, so you would have the availability for a higher yield. Because if you get a whole lot of rain, but you only fertilize for, half your normal annual rainfall, you're not going to get as much benefit out of that rain as you would otherwise. Vice versa, if you go and you fertilize a whole lot, you know, say you fertilize for 70 bushels to the acre, but you don't get the rain to produce for that, you basically spent excess money on your fertilizer that really went to complete waste. So you kind of have to find an effective balance. And that's why even on years where you get a whole lot of rain, what ended up happening is, you know, you don't fertilize for potentially 100 bushel wheat. You fertilize for 70, so you might see 75, potentially 80 if you're doing really good. That's not very common out here. A really good year for us is about 70. That's what we target for on a lot of our fields. And so it's really a balance. That's why we hire an agronomist. Doing that has helped our farm a whole lot, helped our soil health, helped our yields, everything like that. Helps us make informed decisions. If you farm and you haven't hired an agronomist, I would encourage you to at least give it a try. I think it could be a super helpful deal. Or maybe you have a lot of experience in agronomy, maybe you got a degree, got training somewhere. That's super good too, but definitely educate yourself on your soil health and really be proactive about taking care of all your ground, because like I said, it'll take care of you. And obviously everybody wants to succeed, wants to have successful crops, and that's a big part of it. So here we are. He's coming back down the way, and I gotta go back out there. So it's later in the evening now. We're finally getting our last load of the day put on. I guess we'll have one more, but we're gonna leave it on the sprayer overnight, and then we'll come back. I'll drop him off. He'll spray it out, and then I will go fill up the truck in the morning when the rest of the fertilizer gets here. So you can kind of get a little bit of an idea of how we load here. Our sprayer does not have front load, it's a side load. They updated it when the R-Series sprayers came out. They started putting front load on, so because of that we have to pull up behind it like so, and we can only pull up this side. It has to be the left side of the sprayer facing the back of the truck. So it's just kind of one of the things we have to deal with. I can kind of show a little bit more of the wheat here. Obviously going to be a little bit patchy out on the edges, but once you get in here a little bit, it's looking good. And there are your fertilizer tracks there. And actually, it looks a little bit dry, but if you dig down just a little ways, you can get into some nice wet dirt in there. There's actually pretty good subsoil. So we're doing pretty good. And like I said, we're due for about an inch of total precip within the next couple days. So we're going to be sitting pretty good. Hope for the best. The wheat's looking phenomenal. So yeah, nothing to really complain about here. We're going to get it shut down, and then I'm going to make a little sprayer edit or something like that for you guys. We'll just have to see. So yeah.